Hey, this is Dr. Marsden here. I thought I'd talk a little bit about English sonnets, and I thought I'd also look through the process of what I go through to completely understand a sonnet. So today we'll look at a classical Shakespearean sonnet by Shakespeare, and we'll talk a little bit about the form. So the sonnet is originally an Italian form. It's written by a guy named, or popularized by a guy named Petrarch. It's usually used for love poetry, and often for love poetry that's like in a sequence talking about a relationship. And Shakespeare does a number of these. So the problem is when this Italian form is imported into England, well, frankly, the Italian sonnet's harder to write in English than it is in Italian, because Italian has tons of words that rhyme with each other. So it's very easy to write an Italian sonnet in Italian because you got lots of words that end in A. So they decided that they needed a different form for sonnets in English that would be easier to write in the English language. And so instead of what we've got in the Italian sonnet, we'll have 14 lines again, so still a sonnet, divided into 4 parts. That's 3 quatrains, that's units of 4 lines, and a couplet, that's a pair of lines that rhyme with each other. It's got a regular rhyme scheme, so if you're doing an official all the way across English sonnet, you'll have the first quatrain A, B, A, B, the second C, D, C, D. Notice that we're going to have more rhymes necessary, but there's not as many. We only ever have to have 2 words that on a given rhyme, which makes it much easier to write these in English. The third quatrain is E, F, E, F, and then a G, G at the end, right? So we're going to read 3 of these. The first one we'll go over in detail. That's Not Marble Nor the Gilded Monuments. That's Sonnet 55. Shakespeare, by the way, didn't really title his poems. He just gave them numbers. And so when we use the title, we're just sort of assuming that the first line is the title. Okay, That Time of Year Thou Mayst in Me Behold. That's Sonnet 73 by Shakespeare. And then a modern sonnet, Love Is Not All It Is, Not Meat or Drink by Edna St. Vincent Millay. Now, let's take a look at this classic English sonnet, and we'll also stop and break some stuff down so that we can understand the poem completely. So we're going to work at it a quatrain at a time. So, not marble nor the gilded monuments of princes shall outlive this powerful rhyme, but you shall shine more bright in these contents than unswept stone besmeared with sluttish time. By the way, if we wanted to do meter, and I'm not going to do meter on this poem, you'll find out that it's mostly iambic pentameter, but that it's got some substitutions in it to make it sound a little bit more natural. So once I've read it once, and then I've listened to it closely, then I want to go through and make sure I understand it. So first of all, I need to figure out whether I understand all the words that are in it. And we need to come up with a paraphrase, if we can. So, not marble, nor the gilded monuments of princes shall outlive this powerful rhyme. It seems like he's comparing 2 things in this, and he's going to do it all the way through. So on the one hand, if you want to be famous and have your name live forever, you could run a country and build a bunch of marble statues of yourself and have big monuments and plaques that explain who you were, right? So that's type 1 of being immortal. And by the way, poets are really concerned about death, and they're really concerned generally about how to get out of it, at least in some ways. So that's A. The other way that we can become immortal is we can live forever in poetry. Okay, and that's the one he does, so you can imagine that he's going to make that sound better than the other way. But you shall shine more bright in these contents than unswept stone. So, as a matter of fact, those monuments, this you, whoever he's talking to, in a sonnet, if you're talking to a you, it's usually the beloved. It's the person that you've had a relationship with. shall shine more bright in these contents. Hey, this is reflexive. It's talking about the poem itself. Than unswept stone besmeared with sluttish time. So people have to keep up monuments, and if they don't, well, actually, we've got a funny word here, right? We've got the word sluttish. And if you're familiar with the usual modern use of the word slut, this could be really super confusing. Because first time I read this, I tried to make this like morally loose or sexually licentious or something, and I could not figure out how time would be that way. So then I did something that I'm going to recommend that you do every time you run into a word, particularly in poetry or in drama, that you don't know, or that seems like what you know about it isn't quite what it really should be in the poem. I'm going to go to the Oxford English Dictionary. If you're on the campus, you can get to this directly by typing in oed.com. If you're off campus, you have to go through the library, then go through A to Z resources, find the entry for it, click on it, and log in. But it's the best dictionary that exists of English. And it's really good because it doesn't just say what words mean now, but what words meant in the past, and it'll give you the first example of every new meaning. So when I run into sluttish, it means dirty and untidy in dress and habits. That's weird. Okay. And actually we go down, we find 1609, hey, there's this example, as a matter of fact. Now that doesn't have anything to do with sex at all. And as a matter of fact, originally a slut is just someone who doesn't keep house very well. But there's something weird that happens in a lot of languages where words that have to do with regular dirtiness become words that have to do with sexual dirtiness. I don't know what it is. So it takes a while. By Shakespeare's time, you could go either way. Sluttish means, well, uncleaned, messed up, or of a low or lewd character. We could do that. And it comes down to fairly late in the game when that changed. The oldest versions of sluttish are only about being poorly dressed or keeping a bad house. So that's something just to keep in mind when we're working with these poems, is that words change over time, and that can really fool you. So let's get on to quatrain 2. When wasteful war shall statues overturn, and broils root out the work of masonry, nor Mars his sword, nor war's quick fire shall burn the living record of your memory. Hey, that's nice. We don't know some words in here probably. Masonry is just any kind of stonework. Hey, that's easy. Wasteful war does waste stuff. Broils. Well, let's look back here. A confused disturbance, tumult, or turmoil, a quarrel. So, which is, by the way, a word that Shakespeare uses a lot, and that we don't use it at all anymore. So again, we have to look that up. So it's going to be like fights and quarrels. And in fights and quarrels, one of the things that happens is that the victorious side knocks over statues of the people who lost. Likewise, nor Mars his sword. Mars is the god of war. Nor war's quick fire. When you have a war, things burn down. But someone who's immortalized in poetry has a living record because people have memorized the poem. So far, so good. Notice, by the way, each quatrain develops a theme from the previous one, and that's nice. Usually really well-written English sonnets where they're playing by all the rules will have maybe, well, we've got one sentence per in each one of these. That's nice. We've got one big idea in each one, and then a wrap-up. Okay. Not all poets are going to be able to do that, and so we'll have sonnets that aren't playing by those particular goals. So let's look at the next one. Against death and all oblivious enmity. Enmity is hate or dislike. Oblivious is to make you be forgotten. Okay? shall you pace forth, your praise shall still find room, even in the eyes of all posterity. Posterity, it turns out, is everybody who comes after you, right? So all the generations after your death are your posterity that wear this world out to the ending doom. Okay, that sounds bad. But one thing to know is that every time we're going to read something, we need to know a little bit about the culture that it comes from and what they tend to believe. So in Shakespeare's day, when you're thinking about the end of the world is Judgment Day, which would be Doomsday. But doom just means like I don't know, almost like your sentence, what's going to happen to you, the judgment that gets called on you. That doesn't necessarily mean anything. It could be a good doom, right? So that's weird compared to the way we use it too. So in Shakespeare's day, they thought that when you died, you were laying in the grave, waiting for Judgment Day, and at Judgment Day you get back up and you get judged. And then it's heaven or hell, depending. So that's a little bit different than we might read it if we didn't know that. So now we're going to come to the couplet. A couplet, again, is any group of two lines that go together. So till the judgment that yourself arise. Okay, so you're going to be famous forever, but not forever, only until doomsday, and then you're going to get back up. You live in this. And that's going to be reflexive, this poem itself, and dwell in lovers' eyes. Because Shakespeare is explaining here how love poems tend to work, which is you write them maybe for your beloved, whether he or she is concrete and real or whether they're hypothetical, and then other people will use those poems for their own courtships. So this idea that you'll dwell in lovers' eyes, as people are reading this poem back and forth to each other over the centuries to come, you're still there. You're still alive. Now, of course, there's some ironies in this thing, in that there is no name attached. We don't know if this beloved is male or female. Shakespeare writes poems about both. We don't know if this is his wife or a lover or a patron it's really hard to say. But he's using one of the promises that poets have that not everyone has, which is that I can make you famous. Anyway, that's just a quick run through. Remember, we need to figure out if we're going to do a poem, we should figure out the rhyme scheme, what kind of poem it is, and then we need to look up all the words and try to think about how they were used at the time of the composition.